Hello, and welcome to my first episode of a mini series or a series in full on Power Up development. I'll be taking you through the basics to intermediate to advanced level along the journey of the series. We'll be looking at creating a uniform app from scratch. That means creating the database and also creating the app as well. We'll be utilizing SharePoint lists as our database, which is exciting. We'll be utilizing Dataverse at the moment. So what we'll do is we'll look at creating the database first, which isn't too hard or complicated, and then also kind of walk you through my train of thought when creating it. And then we'll also get into the basics of Power App development as well. Okay, so let's start with the database. I always recommend starting your solutions with your database. You could start with a pretty basic database and then slowly build as you start to do your solution. You kind of think, oh, I need this, I need that. So for now, we're just going to start with a basic database that's going to capture just the order details. So when we submit an order, it's just going to capture the order details, but not so much the items that are in there. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the naming convention that I like to use. So first, we need to go to the SharePoint site. If you have your own account, the best way I find to use it is I just go through Teams. I hit the three dots in the Teams I've created. Let's go open in SharePoint, and that will take me to this site here, right? Obviously, you got to sign in, all that type of stuff, which is good. So when we get to this site contents screen, which you can just get to by going to settings up the top and go to site contents, we're just going to click new list. So the way I like to use create all my new lists is I like to put dev at the front of it, which just indicates to me that it's currently in development. What that would mean in the Power Apps when we're actually trying to look up our SharePoint list, we'll be able to easily find it by typing in dev for development, and it's going to show us all of our SharePoint lists. So it keeps it nice and neat and easy to access. I'm going to turn Show in Site Navigation off, and then I'm just going to call this TJK Pro. Now, any spaces won't actually show up in. You can't actually use spaces when trying to search things up in Power Apps. So I try to replace the spaces where possible with underscores. So I'm just going to do TJK Pro underscore uniform underscore order, and then we'll go details. Right? Boom. Click OK to create, and now we've created the database SharePoint list. Right? So housekeeping things, when we're adding columns, which is this one here, you got all these different columns to select from. The best columns to use is text, choice, and multiple lines of text. Yes, you can use any of the other ones that are there. I wouldn't recommend them because they can be a bit finicky when you're using them in Power Apps, especially the person and especially date and time. You're just going to run into a lot of issues when trying to patch stuff. You can use that. I will eventually create videos on how to really get around there. But for starting, let's just stick to single line of text. You could do a lot with just single lines of text. So we're going to do a single line of text to start with. Now, the way that I like to do my naming convention, once again, is I'll do TJK Pro underscore, and then I like to abbreviate the actual list itself. So I'll abbreviate UOD for uniform order details, then underscore, and then I'll just copy that, and then I'll actually give it a proper name. So I'm going to use reference number underscore number, making sure that any spaces I'm replacing with underscores. Once again, this is going to be very, very useful when you're trying to search up a particular column in your SharePoint list, which you will see very shortly, hopefully, or before the end of this video. So I'm just going to do reference number, right? And I'm just going to hit save. There's a single line of text. So what I also like to do as housekeeping is I like to hide this title. Because title is such a general name or a common name, with all your SharePoint lists are going to have a column called title. So when you're looking for a specific title from a specific SharePoint list, you're going to have troubles trying to pick the right one. So I just hide it, and I never use that title column. Right? So I've got a reference number. I'm just also going to do, let's start with a gender cut column. This is to identify that this particular order is for a male cut or a female cut. I will also put the employee's name. So we'll do employee's name, employee name, and we'll do their email address. Now, in my work, let me just do this, sorry, and then I'll explain my reasoning for this. Email address. In the company I work for, there's a lot of staff. Now, the problem with using a people column is if someone leaves the organization, it doesn't actually capture any of their details anymore, so it's kind of lost. So when it comes to looking up data historically, you can't actually identify who that person is, because you can, in particularly our company, we do have people with a lot of the same name or names that are similar. So our unique reference is our employee name. We do have employee numbers, but you can't get that through Outlook. It is a privacy issue. So the employee emails is something that we're going to use to uniquely identify an individual. But we have the employee name there as well, because people also like just to see the name, because they're not going to go, oh, this email's for this particular person. They just prefer to go full name. So that's why I've got both those there. All right. Trying to think what else I could potentially need right now. I don't think I need anything else right now. You can also add, so you can go show hide. You can also show created by and created for now. Normally they'd be the same, but eventually we're going to add into this app that they can order on behalf of someone. So we want to see who created that order and when it was ordered by. There's got to be a couple of other columns that we're going to have to add eventually. Just off the top of my head, you've got your approval stages as well, your collection stages and things like that. But for now, this is enough for us to get going, so we're just going to leave it like that. You're more than welcome to go through and keep adding, but sometimes you'll find it is easier to just get it started, get that first couple of columns in, create your app, and then you can start to add on columns from there. So for now, I'm just going to switch back to Power Apps, and we'll go from there. Okay, welcome back. So this is the Power Apps pages. You can get to there from your SharePoint side if you really want to, by clicking up here, going more apps, and then it should be here somewhere. All apps. There's Power Pages. Power Apps is here. So that's one way of getting there. I bookmark it. I'd recommend bookmarking it. It's just so much easier to get to. So in order to create an app, since we don't have any apps, as you can see, this is a new environment for me. I do have one on the side here that's for all my assets. It's not recommended for you. I just have it for me. So you just go apps. You can go new app up here, or you can go create. And we're just going to do a blank app. So you've got blank canvas app, blank app based on Dataverse, and Power Pages website. Definitely not going to be touching Power Pages. We may eventually, not in this series but a different series, touch on Dataverse. But just so you know, all Dataverse's applications are model-driven app, and they're very, very complicated to create. But all the UI and all that stuff is kind of created for you automatically. We're going to stick to Canvas apps. You can do a lot with Canvas apps, and I'm hoping this series will show you how much you can actually do. So I'm going to leave it as a tablet. If you're going to do phone, you're going to have a reduced size. You can create a tablet form and kind of make it dynamic based on the size of the screen. I preferably don't like to do that. I'd rather have two separate apps because I don't want to overload. If it's something that's going to be on a desktop, the reason for the desktop is that there's going to be a lot of things, a lot of functions to the app, and you don't want to push that to a mobile phone because it's going to slow it down, because it is really reliant on the internet connection. So once again, because the app is in a development stage, I'm going to do DEV for dev. Okay, so because it's a development, we've put DEV for development. So I'm now going to name it TJK Pro, and then I'm just going to put admin. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just doing it this for no particular reason. Admin dashboard uniform ordering. Right? I'm just this isn't how I would normally call stuff. I'm just doing it for this particular one. I'm just going to go create. You can call it whatever you want. Doesn't matter. So here we are. This is the canvas screen. This is your edit mode. This is where you will be creating your apps. So I'm going to start from the top left. working my way to the right, and then we'll go back over to the top left, move our way down, and then we'll do to the right screen. So the top left, the back button, very, very important. When you are leaving the app and you're done with your editing, you want to press the back button. If you close this, it still keeps you signed in. Now, it's really frustrating if you are working with someone else or someone is trying to teach you. If you click this, you have locked the app, right? So someone else can't go in and make those changes until you come back into the app and press back, or a lot of time has passed. So when you're done with the app, make sure you are hitting back. The next button is your undo. You can also use Control Z. Works like any normal Microsoft program, is that you can use your control functions to a certain degree to do your normal like quick or shortcuts, right? So Control Z will do your undo. You also got redo as well. This one here is your cut, copy, paste. Can use Control X, Control C, Control V, so I don't actually use that at all. Pardon me. You've got insert. This is where all your basic assets are. So I'm going to reference them as basic. Basic assets are one that come preloaded into the app, right? Custom assets is what we can create ourselves. It's not like the custom assets aren't going to be like this where they're going to be layers. It's just ones that we create and then we bring across. They have their own type of functionalities to them, right? Anything with preview is in testing mode still. Anything without is in non-testing mode. So Microsoft have said, yep, this is okay to use. Anything with preview is like Microsoft are like, oh yeah, it works okay, but don't be reliant on it fully. There are also, we need to be very aware that there is also modern controls and non-modern controls. So if I type in button, so up here you can see this has got a different icon, and they're in different categories as well. Your classic controls that are still available, and Microsoft haven't said if they are going to get rid of them eventually. I hope they don't. The modern controls the classic controls and the modern controls have different properties. They have different design properties as well, but I will go through that in detail. But it's very important to know the difference between a modern control and a classic control. I prefer to use classic controls where possible, just because they have a little bit more design freedom to them. Right? So you got add data. This will be where you add data to your SharePoint, to your Power App. So we'll be doing that soon. New screen, if you need to add new screens, you can do that here. They do give you some templates as well. Background color, if you want to change the color of the background. Background images, if you want to upload an image to it. You got your settings. I won't deep dive into that today. And on the three dots here, you've got open, which just allows you to open like another Power App. This little symbol here will let you know that you're currently in editing. This button here will toggle your properties on and off. This one will toggle your comments on and off. This is your app checker. I don't use this at all, to be quite honest, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but this will just let you know if you have any issues with the app at the moment that could potentially break the app. This is your share, so allow you to share the app. Your play button, so this puts the app into play mode so you can test it out. You got your save button, which also allows you to save with notes, save as, and download a copy. And then you got your publish button, right? If you hit publish, it's going to automatically save it for you. Up here, very important, this, I will be referring this as property dropdown. So whenever I say property dropdown, I'm talking about this top left corner with this dropdown here. This will show you all properties of the particular item that's selected. Because I don't have anything selected at the moment, this is showing the properties of this screen. So see how this screen's selected? I've got field, content, height, image position, all this type of stuff. If I click app, the properties change. So now I've got back enabled, confirm, exit, all this other type of stuff that's here. Very important to know. Property dropdown is this. When I refer to property dropdown, it's this. When I refer to properties, it'll be this section over here. Next to the property dropdown is your formula bar. There's two ways of coding. You've got this formula bar, which I like to use a lot, and then you've got in your advanced, all these are also formula bars. Difference is, with this formula bar, I can extend this, make it bigger, you can really see everything. If you use your property ones, you only just see this space as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. This little button here will open and close your formula bar, so you don't have to drag it like I do. This button here is your Copilot. I don't really use it. I'm not going to explain it. Over on the far right is your properties. So this is your properties tab, or properties command area. I'm not too sure what to call it. So in here, this will show you all the properties of whatever you selected. So at the moment, screen selected. So I can see the fill, the background image, and the fit size of any image that's there. You've also, that's just your display one. So that'll show you very basic controls. You've got advanced. Advanced will show you every single property that's in this a screen, or the asset that was selected. If you want to change the name of this asset, you can press it up here. You just click on here and you can type in whatever you want. So let's just call this dev homepage. Once again, I'm using dev as a way of being able to find things quickly when I'm searching at Power Apps, which we'll soon see. Right? And as you can see over here, it changes the name of it as well, right, in your tree view, which segues into tree view. So on the left side here, you've got all these different buttons. The first one up here is your tree view. This will show you your parent and child relationship with your assets, right? The next one under is insert. It's the exact same as this drop down. I prefer to use the drop down, but you've also got it here, and you can search here and here as well, right? Next is your data. This will show you all your data that's connected to the app, as well as how to add it. So once again, just takes it from up here to here. Funny enough, I actually use here to manage my data. This is your variables. So as we start to create variables, they'll show up here. And we'll get to that in a little bit. You could also search for variables here as well. Very important. Your search. You find and replace. This will, if you type in a text, this will search the whole app, every single formula, every single property to try and find what you're looking for, and it will present it here. So it's also very good. The three dots here, this will give you themes, media, Power Automate, and advanced tools. Themes allow you to change the color of your assets that you create straight into the screen. So that will change color based on what theme you picked, but you can customize that as well. You can also add a theme as well, name it, give it the colors, and then down the bottom here you can see the preview of what it's going to look like with all the buttons. Right? Media is where you can add images, videos, and audio files using the app. Power Automates, I will get into that in further later episodes, and advanced tools. So this is your testing and live monitoring. Right? Down here is another button for your settings, and down here is your virtual agent. I use settings up here, don't use virtual agents. So that is this whole, what we see on the screen, that's what we see here. That's everything that we're going to be utilizing. Okay, so what's the first step? Well, we've got two choices. If we kind of know, we want to start designing a home screen, and when I say home screen, I mean like potentially a screen that's going to have buttons that kind of navigate you to all different screens. We can start there. I'm going to start with the second option, which is adding the databases, right? I want to get those databases in, and I want to actually start to populate stuff. So you just click on Add Data, and we search for SharePoint. Boom, right there. I'm going to click on SharePoint, and now it's going to ask me to connect, and then it's going to want me to actually tell it which SharePoint site I want to look through. So I'm going to use this one here, which is Power App Devs, and then you got to select the list. So nice and easy. If you're in an organization, it's going to be very, very big. You can always just go to the SharePoint site where your list is. So like here, grab this link and paste it in this one here, and then it will come up with the one to connect to, and then you pick your SharePoint list. So now our data is connected to the app, which is awesome. So what can we do from here? So I'm going to show you how to actually submit data from the app to the SharePoint list. Right, we'll start there. So what we can do is we can go insert, and we start with a simple form. Now just remember, you've got form modern controls, which is currently in preview, and you got your classic control. I'm going to stick to the classic control. So I'm just going to go edit form. So this will create this massive big square here. This is known as an asset, right? This is a basic asset. This is one that we haven't created. This is one that comes pre-installed in Power Apps, right? So you can click and drag, move it around. It's very similar to a lot of Microsoft products. You can resize it, right? or without coding anything. If you want to be very specific on the size, you got to make sure that you click the asset, and on the right side here under your properties, you see you've got all these different properties that you could change. If we want to change the sizing, we just go to size, and we can manually put in a width, right? Width and height. So I'm going to make this 800. Nope, it's too big. Let's go 700. We'll do 700 by 800, like so, right? Next thing we need to do is we need to connect this form to the data. So when you click on a form that doesn't have any data connected, you'll get this little pop-up. If this doesn't appear on the right side here is data source, you can also select it through there. When you select a data source, it's automatically going to grab columns from the SharePoint list and add it to the form. So as you can see, it's brought in title, it's brought in my reference, gender cut, employee name, employee full name, and attachments. I don't need title. I'm going to delete it. So you just click on it. So apologies, let me go back. If you'll let me. It's not going to let me, that's fine. So when you click on your form, you see it's going to come with, it's going to like select these squares that are there, or rectangles. These are known as data cards. Easy representation is, it says card right there. When you look on your left side here in your tree view, it also comes up as a data card. In the data card, you're going to have all these assets already pre-generated. Okay, they come pre-generated with a form. Very important. Pre-generated with a form. I didn't add these, that automatically add them. We can start to customize those. So what I just did very quickly, which I apologize for, is I deleted the title data card. Now I'm just going to delete the attachments data card. I delete it by clicking on it and hitting the delete button on my keyboard, or I can select it here, right click and go delete. Right. So I'm just going to do the normal way, hit delete. So now I've got 4 questions or 4 fields in here that I need to start to enter data into. Now, if you want to test this out, you're more than welcome. You've got 2 ways. You can hold Alt on your keyboard. So this is me holding Alt, and I can actually select the items, and I can type stuff in there. But the problem with typing stuff when you're holding Alt is it's not actually going to type anything. So we need to go into play mode. So I'd say if you're trying to test like a button out or something like that, hold Alt, and as you can see, I can hover over this. If not, hit play button to preview the app. But as you can see, no items are displayed. So when I click on it, there's actually a property called default mode. Now that default mode is set to edit. Now because we aren't selecting a particular item that's in the SharePoint list that exists, it's not actually showing any data. We will fix that in a second. For now, we want to change this default mode to new. So now that it's in new and I hit the play button, I can now see I can select the fields and I can start to type in numbers. So I could just do reference 1, 2, 3, 4. I could do gender cut as M for male or F for female. I can type in the employee name, and I can also type in the employee email address. So it's TJK Productions didn't even know what that one is. Let's just do at hotmail.com for example. Right? So that's how that works. So when you've entered data in, we need to then submit it, right? So how do we submit a form? So you want to get a button. This is the norm. This is a classic way of doing it. We want the classic button. You can use the modern control button. That's fine. I'm going to click the classic button. I'm just going to drag this over here. Now this is where we start to do our first coding. It's a very simple one. Click on your asset button, like so, and in your formula bar, right, make sure your property drop down is on select. There are a bunch of properties in this one. Make sure we have selected on select. We're going to use a formula called submit form. So when you're typing formulas, it does have kind of predictive text formulas. So as you can see here, I've typed in sub, and it's giving me all these different items. It is going to look for anything that it thinks is useful based on whatever you type in there. So because I did SUB, you can see it's pulling in anything that has those 3 letters in it, right? Whether or not they're in order or not. So you can see here, this has got SBU, for an example, for slate blue. It also shows you the submit form function, right? So you can see a little bit about what it does by pressing this little arrow next to it. you can either press tab to select it or you can click it. Right? Anytime you're using a function, you'll find that you need to give it open and close brackets. Right? Now inside this closed bracket, we need to tell it a form to submit. So you can tell it what form to submit based on the name of the form. So as you can see here, this particular form is called form 1. So if I type in form, as you can see, it's going to show me that asset, plus it's going to show me a whole bunch of other stuff. That's where naming convention comes very useful later on when you've got a lot of assets. So I'm going to select form 1 by clicking on it. And as you can see, it's highlighted that asset to say, hey, this is what form 1 is. This is the asset. And you can see it's represented by the color. Green for form 1, and it's selected that there. So now, if I hit play and hit the button, which is our submit button, that's going to submit it. Right? So now if I go back to my data base and hit refresh, you can see that's submitted. So just like that, it's that easy to create a form and then submit data to it. This is where we start to then go a little bit further and look at some automatic ways of getting data in. Okay, so when you do submit a form, especially when it's new, it goes into the state where it's been submitted, you can't do anything. So something that you now need to do is you need to reset that asset, or in particular, you need to reset that form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this button as submit form. I'm now going to create a second button. We'll just put it underneath, and we're just going to call it reset form, like so. We're then going to click on it, go to the formula, and we're going to type in reset. Now there is 2 reset functions. There's reset, which allows you to reset any other asset other than a form. That's why there is this reset form one, which is specifically for your form. So you use your open brackets, you select the form as form 1, and you close the brackets. So now you'll see when I press this, it's going to reset the form, like so. So now I can go and start typing again. If I were just to type in random stuff and hit reset, it's going to clear those fields, right? And that's the function of REST forms. Now, you don't actually have to have 2 separate buttons for that. You can actually put them in the same button. So what you can do is you can grab that code and you go to the one button that you want to use. If you hit your parentheses, I've got to confirm if that's the right one. This will allow you to have multiple codes or formulas run in one button. Now, the problem that we will touch on later is even if this form submits successfully, it will still run the other functions. So what some people like to do is on the actual form themselves, there's an on success property. They'll normally chuck that reset into here, right? That's what they would normally do. I tend to do it a little bit differently, but for this and for the testing purposes, we're just going to chuck it here. So we're just going to do reset form 1 here. So now I'm going to put in a different reference number. I'm going to put a mail. We'll do the employee as JK, and we'll do tjkproductions@hotmail.com. Right? And we're going to hit submit form. So that will now submit the form and then straight away reset it, and then we can see that the data comes through. Right? So this is now how we start to have multiple things happen from one button click. Now we've got 2 lines of data in our database now. How do we display it? So I'm just going to delete this, and apologies if I start to go a little bit quick. I'm just moving things around at the moment. The best way to display data in Power Apps is something called a gallery, which is these ones here. I like to work with blank horizontal galleries or blank vertical galleries. If you use these ones here, they're the modern ones. They come pre-selected with stuff in there. For this testing purposes, we're going to use one of these modern ones, right? So if I go vertical gallery, it's going to create this asset and it's going to put a whole bunch of other assets inside of it. I'm just going to move this over here and make it a little bit smaller. So right now it's displaying all this testing data or fake data. So we want it to actually display the data from our SharePoint list. So because we've loaded that data in already, we can just select the data from the data source here, little drop down, and select it. And then based on the columns that we have there, it's going to try and automatically sort out what data to display. It's not going to do the best job, but it's fine. You can change the layout of this, so because we're not really displaying any images in this database, we can select on layouts and we get a bunch of different ones that we can select from, right? I'm just going to do title, subtitle, and body, right? So then what you'll need to do is it's showing nothing at the moment because, as I said, it's looking for those particular type of columns. So I'm going to go to, in the tree view, I can see the gallery and all the assets that are in there. I'm going to go to the title, which is the first one here. This is going to be my reference number. So whenever you're in a gallery, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, and this is where I always struggle with. The gallery is showing each row of data, right? So every row that we see here, it's showing them. It calls them items, right? So if we want to reference that particular item, it's called this item, right? So that's why you see here saying this item.title. So whenever you're coding something, so we code this item, right? As soon as we hit full stop, it's now going to display all the properties that are associated with that particular asset. In this particular case, it's going to show every single column from the SharePoint list, right? These are all the columns that are automatically generated from the SharePoint list. When I go down, I can see there's employee email, employee name, gender cut, and reference. So if I select on this reference, it's now going to display that in this gallery for every single row of data that I have or every single item that appears in the gallery. So now if I go to the second one, which is subtitle, I can do, and this is where it comes to the naming conventions, right? So when you have a lot of different columns, if I just type in employee name, you see it's going to look up that employee name underscore email. If I try and do space email, it's going to look at it as a different line of coding. So that's why I do the underscores. So it's nice and easy. So there's the employee email. And then the last one here, we could just do gender cut, like so. I'm just hitting the tab buttons in order to make it quicker. You can left click as well. This is a lot of information. I'm almost done showing you what I want to show you. So in this particular form, we now want to display whatever is selected on this gallery. How can we tell what is selected? At the moment, there's this little rectangle that's being displayed. Whenever we click on the item, it's going to have that rectangle there, and you can see everything bolds and unbolds based on what's selected, right? So another way you can tell is, I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. We can create a label, right? This is purely for testing purposes. We create a label, and now we want to get the property of the selected item in this gallery, right? So we get the name, which is gallery 1, and in this label, we'll just paste the name. We'll do dot for properties, and you want to go selected, and that's saying I want to see the properties of the selected item. So if I go selected dot, and we'll do a reference number, now it's going to display this reference number here, right? And if I click on this one, it changes the reference number. So as you can see, we're just using the formulas to get the properties of other assets and then do certain functions based on that. So with this particular one now, what we can do is we can change this default mode back to edit, and in advance or up in your properties, you've got item here. And now we say, well, what item do you want to display, right? It's a little bit, it's smart enough to bring in all the fields based off that. It's a whole bunch of coding that's already created when the form's created. So if we do gallery1 dot selected, as you can see, it automatically brings in all those fields, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we change it to this top one, not much changes besides the employee name and the reference number. But as you can see, that's how we display data and allow us to edit it as well. So now, if we go and we change this to 10, 10, 10, 10, and submit the form, you can see it changes up here. And then we go back to our database, and it changes there. Right? So that is the basics of how, not all the basics, but it's a basic. This is what I wanted to at least get started in this video on how to create a database, which is an important step, right? how to create your Power App. Another important step. And now we're starting to interact with that data. As you can see, there isn't a lot of coding involved at the moment for very basic stuff. But we can take these basic things that we're going to learn through this series and make very complex applications. I'm going to call it here for the episode. I'll be recording the next episode straight after. The next episode will be going into adding some more fields and then also automating some of the fields as well, such as the employee name, employee email, and also the reference number. We can automatically get all that data generated, so the user doesn't have to type that in. If you stuck around for the whole end of the video, appreciate it. Please tune in for the series. I want to create this to really get people learning the basics of Power Apps and then using the basics to create complex applications.